You ever wonder about life after death? What's heaven like? A lot of your questions are going to get answered on today's show. John Burke is the lead pastor of Gateway Church in Austin, Texas. Since he and his wife, Kathy, founded the church in 1998, Gateway has grown to over 4,500 members, made up primarily of the unchurched. Motivated by his desire to see people come as they are to Christ, John founded Gateway Leadership Initiative, where he equips the lost to become leaders in God's church. John is a New York Times best-selling author and a much sought-after speaker, having spoken to hundreds of thousands in over 20 nations. Please help me welcome Pastor John Burke.
John, welcome. It's great to have you.
Leon, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Imagine Heaven.
Yeah.
What a great title.
Well, thanks.
Imagine Heaven. Now, for those who are just tuning in, what is this book about, Imagine Heaven?
Well, I wrote Imagine Heaven after studying 1,000 near-death experiences, where people clinically die. Their heart stops, their brain waves cease, they're dead, some for 5 minutes, some for hours. But when they're resuscitated, they tell of this experience of eternity, of the afterlife. And so I'm correlating. I include about 120 of their stories so that you hear in their words what they're describing. But more importantly, it's a study of what the Bible has already taught us about heaven.
Does anything knock the Bible or
no, it
go
doesn't
against
add
it?
any material to the Bible. It colors in this picture that we have a hard time imagining. That's what's so important. Colossians 3 says, set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth. Set your heart where Christ is, for your life is hidden in Christ. The problem, Leon, is that it's much easier for us to set our hearts on retirement because we can imagine it, right?
Yeah.
We can imagine the golf course and the warmer weather and the friends and family and hobbies. We need to imagine heaven because that is ultimately, the life that we long for. And that's what I'm trying to show in Imagine Heaven.
So, if I'm hearing you right, you've researched this for years now.
About 30.
About 30 years. So
it took me a while.
You've got stories, and then you also have gone into medical periodicals and what doctors are saying, things that have taken place in hospitals, people's personal testimonies, kids, blind people, people who know Christ, don't know Christ, and you begin to see these commonalities.
And near-death experiences from around the globe.
Around the globe. Now, we shared a few of them in the first show, but quickly tell me some of the commonalities that you were seeing.
Well, people commonly say they leave their body and they don't really know they're dead because they come more alive than they've ever been. They have a spiritual body. They're able to see their resuscitation and talk about that, which has convinced many skeptical doctors. They end up moving usually through a tunnel or in the book I postulate, could this be like a wormhole from our dimensionality to a greater dimension? I don't know. But they see this beautiful place. And most Christians don't even realize what the Bible describes of heaven. It describes mountains. John is up on a mountain where the angel shows him the New Jerusalem far off. And John can see detail from far off. You ever notice that?
Interesting.
They say that their vision is telescopic. They can see things miles off, like up close, or they can, and colors and vividness that are far beyond what we've ever seen on this earth. So they see the beauty of earth, not unlike earth, but far beyond earth. They're really experienced in new dimensions, and the senses are alive. The smells and the taste and touches are all, it's really hard for them to describe.
They can't even describe, which is what people in the Bible say. They're trying to describe it when Ezekiel are saying, you were talking about hell when we ran out of time.
Yeah, you left people in hell, Leon. You can't do that.
But there were negative. You said almost 1 out of 4 had a negative experience at near death.
Yes, of those who have reported, 23% reported having a hellish near-death experience.
Explain some of those. Like, what kind of did they have evil beings? Was there fire? What was the evil?
And I talk about the 3 kind of different experiences because there are differences, but they actually correlate with the things that Jesus told us. One of the most fascinating, a guy that I interviewed personally, he was a college professor, a tenured college professor who was an atheist. And he was in Paris when his lower intestine ruptured. We went to the hospital. They say that after about 5 hours, you're going to likely die if that doesn't get fixed. Well, it was a weekend. He couldn't get a surgeon. After about 9 hours, he passed. He knew he couldn't do it anymore. Now, he knew that death was just lights out, the end, nothing. And so what happened is he opens his eyes and he's standing by his bed and he's more alive than he's ever felt before. So he's confused. He doesn't know he's dead. Now, this is another commonality that's important, is that people come alive, they feel alive, and oftentimes they have what they call a welcoming committee. People, many times, that they recognize relatives or friends, and it's this joyful reunion. And they know that they're there to guide them and protect them. Especially, I've heard that from Christians, that this welcoming committee was there to protect them. And I ask them, protect them from what? I don't know. Now, here's one of the correlations I make. So Howard, this college professor, has a welcoming committee as well. There are these people that are out in the hall of the hospital saying, Howard, come with us. And he says, I'm hurt, I need surgery, and we know all about you. We're going to help you. Come with us. They seemed nice, sounded kind, and he starts to follow them. Long story short, and it's a long story in there, but it's fascinating. They trick him. They seem nice at first, but they lead him into this outer darkness where literally they begin to attack him. And he still doesn't know exactly where he is or what's going on. And again, now this is the other commonality. Time doesn't work in the same way. And so that's why it's kind of hard to explain, because they say, I don't know if it was an instant or years or infinity. I don't know. Which is what Peter said, right? To the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. One guy, who I don't think is even a Christian, almost said the exact words. So time works differently. So he's in this outer darkness and doesn't know how long it's been. And out of that despair, he remembers a song from a neighbor who took him to Sunday school once. Jesus loves me, blah, blah, blah. He can't remember the rest. And in the depth of his being, he wanted that to be true, that somebody loved him. And he calls out, Jesus, save me, just out of desperation. This brilliant man of light comes, brighter than the sun, emanating love, hands pick him up, take him out of there, and in the presence of Jesus and these angels, Howard has a life review. And he sees his whole life. Now, here's the amazing thing. He comes back, so he revives. And this tenured college professor ends up leaving tenure. No, college professors don't leave tenure.
No way.
And not to become a Christian pastor when you're an atheist. And his wife left him because she was still an atheist.
Wow.
It cost him a lot. And, so I correlate stories like that as well. Howard saw the city of God from, he said, light years, he doesn't know. Because again, your vision is different. Distances are different. Time is different. Travel is different. But I also correlate those who have seen this city of God that John writes about in Revelation 21. This incredible city. One of the best was this TWA airline captain, Captain Dale Black. And he actually was in a small plane taking off in Los Angeles, and it stalled and crashed into a 70-foot high monument at 135 miles an hour. All three passengers dropped 70 feet to the ground dead. But he later revived. And he talks about, and this is so fascinating, only God would do this, right? He welcomes us into his kingdom in a way that's unique to us. So Dale Black is flying into the New Jerusalem. He's flying up to the New Jerusalem and talks about the beauty of the landscape of this city with walls that were as far as he could see in either direction, and these beautiful, majestic mountains behind it. And he's coming in the grass, and they all describe the grass as grass like you've never seen, so alive, and the light coming out of it that just dances with light. And he comes in, and he has this welcoming committee there as well. And he talks about going in through the gates, the angel letting him in through this gate. And I show how he and this pastor who was dead for 90 minutes, as well as this spine surgeon and this blind guy, they're describing this gate, and it's a tunnel through this wall. It's a long tunnel, and it's pearlescent. They say it's not like a giant pearl, it's more like it's pearlescent, of this mesmerizing substance that's otherworldly, that you can kind of see through, but they can pass through it as well.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's what John described, right? He said it was a gate, 12 gates of a single solitary pearl.
Yeah.
But they say it's not like a pearl like we would think. It's pearlescent. It's of another substance. And so those are the kinds of correlations that you start to see, and you start to see what the Bible says, but you see it through the eyes of these people, and it's like you get this panoramic view of the life to come. And by the end of it, you can't wait.
Let's take a break right here because I want to hear more. But if you've just joined us, my guest today is John Burke, who wrote this book, Imagine Heaven, 30 years of study looking at near-death experiences and how many correlations there are, commonalities between all these experiences. Now, we've got more to go, so we'll be right back.
The sun is light, but Jesus is the light of the world.
Yeah.
And in heaven, John says that there is no sun or moon, for the glory of God is its light.
We believe Jesus Christ came to give every person on this planet a chance to live with power, passion, and purpose. Through award-winning, world-class TV programs like this and life-giving resources in Spanish, French, Italian, Russian, and Hindi, Spirit Contemporary is changing lives around the world. Considerable expenses are involved, but each person reached is absolutely worth the cost. People are saved, their faith revived, eternities transformed, all because of your support. With your donation today, you will receive today's special resource.
With the help of technology, it is now easier than ever to connect with friends and family all over the globe. And for the first time ever, Springs Church is available to watch online. Get access to Spirit Contemporary Church every single week. You'll enjoy great music and an inspiring message from Leon Fontaine. You'll even be able to connect with people from around the world.
This is my personal invitation to join me on Springs Online. Welcome back. My guest today is John Burke, and we're talking about heaven. Now, I want to go so many directions, but when you talk about heaven, like the pictures that I've seen in magazines as a young man growing up is heaven is like all of us sitting with our legs crossed getting harp lessons.
Exactly.
In a white gown.
On a cloud.
On a cloud. I mean, the most boring, it's all white forever and ever. And then we hear people tell us we're going to just sit there and just sing for eternity. Now that really bores me just thinking about that.
I know, you and I, we're pastors, but an eternal church service sounds boring, right?
But then they had a picture of hell just below, and it's where all the beautiful people go, and great booze and drugs and the party of a lifetime, and they got this backwards.
It's such a lie.
It's such a lie. Hell's going to be alone, if anything.
Well, yes, heaven is the place we were created for.
Yes.
You know, the light and the life and the love of God that energizes everything. And that really is it. We come alive. You know, Jesus said, don't forbid the little children to come to me, for the kingdom of heaven is for such as these. You know, there is an innocence and a life and an exploration that gets squeezed out of us in this broken, evil world, right?
Yeah.
But that gets renewed. I love what a bank president who he died in a hospital in Michigan and loved golf, and he said, I was dressed in what I would normally wear for golf, and he said I felt like I was a teenager again, only so much better. He said my old geezer body was totally renewed and just energized. And think about that. Think about God created this life. He created this earth. In fact, Isaiah, when he saw heaven, he heard the angels say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. So think about that.
Wow.
If this earth shows something of the glory of God, and yet it's fallen, it's wounded, it's broken. Paul said it's groaning as in the pains of childbirth, waiting for the children of God, right? To be renewed with the children of God. So that is what heaven's going to be.
I've always
It's
thought,
life.
Yeah, I've always thought that, like, we're made in the likeness and the image of God as people. And then when I read about heaven and I read about this earth, it's kind of like both have food, streets, houses, gates, cities. So it's almost like earth was made in the likeness and the image of heaven.
And you know what? I think that's what Hebrews 8 says.
Yeah.
You know, it says that Moses made the tabernacle as a shadow or a copy of the real one in heaven. And so I think that's very true. I think if you think about it, even the sun.
Yeah.
The sun is light, but Jesus is the light of the world.
Yeah.
And in heaven, John says that there is no sun or moon, for the glory of God is its light that lights everything up and brings life to it. So the sun is like temporary life support, an artificial life support. The water, you know, our bodies are dependent on water. Water is the most unique chemical substance on this planet, right? It cleanses. It's so unique. We can't live without water. But maybe the water on this life is artificial life support to the streams of living water that come from the Holy Spirit in heaven that give everything life. And that's what people talk about. It's fascinating, some of the things, some of the correlations that I find in there. That, you know, one of the most difficult things for people when they come back, they're depressed.
Really? Oh.
You would think this is a gift.
Yeah, oh, I get to go
actually,
back.
it's not, because they say, this life is not what I was created for. Why do I have to be here? You know, the spine surgeon that I interviewed, she didn't even write about her experience for 10 years because her kids were young, and she knew that she had to say it was so wonderful she didn't want to come back. She had no intention of coming back, but she didn't want her kids to think that she didn't love them or was rejecting them, because it wasn't that at all.
No.
It's that it is so much better. And you know that when we're together again there, it's life. That's the other thing is people, we have a fuzzy, ethereal view of heaven. You know, it's kind of like that Far Side cartoon I saw years ago where two guys are sitting on a cloud and one's hanging off the cloud and he's just kind of whistling. He's going, I wish I'd brought a magazine. You know? 'Cause
Boring.
And yet, that's just the opposite of what people say. It is all that God has created and so much more, and we get to explore it.
I read a verse somewhere, and I forgot the version now, where it basically brought this thought out that it will take God forever to show us His variety.
Absolutely.
Like,
I mean, think about it. Think about the God we worship. You know, scientists say He's created 7 million species right on this planet. We've only categorized 1.2 million. He's creative, right?
He's creative.
And the beauty. And so why would we ever think that heaven, where God's will is done, as opposed to earth where it's not done, would be less tangible, less real, less fun, less enjoyable, less creative, less cultural? Why?
Yeah.
And
Never.
relationships. You know, my wife she didn't used to like to talk about heaven. You know, I obviously have. And she's like, well, but you know, we won't be married. And we won't, and I said, well, where'd you get that idea? Well, Jesus said, you know, there won't be marriage in heaven. And I pointed out, yeah, but that means I think there won't be new marriages because there won't be procreation anymore. There's not a need.
Right.
But there is marriage. In fact, there's the marriage celebration of God Himself to all His people, and our relationships don't grow less. We retain the memories of life.
Well said.
And I think even the relationships and the family relationships, but they go deeper in a closeness and a unity that we've only longed for.
Yeah.
Think about that. Even the best marriage, you're never as one and unified as you long to be.
It's true.
But Jesus said that. His last prayer was that we might be one just as He and the Father are one. Right?
So good. So a lot of the questions people are going to have is, are my pets there? Can I ride horses there? Do we eat there? Is there going to be bakeries? Any answers in all the stuff you studied?
Yeah, actually, I write in the last chapter about the city of God, pets allowed.
Okay.
Of course, then the answer, the question is, does everybody carry doggy bags? Well, and there are all kinds of fascinating questions that I don't have answers to.
Right.
And God's left some and a lot up to our imaginations. But I do think our pets will be there, and here's why. Isaiah talks about when everything is renewed. In heaven, and there's a time when I'm writing Imagine Heaven is about the intermediate heaven. There's going to be a time when heaven and earth are rejoined and recreated, and these new bodies we get are kind of like version 2.0. This is version 1.0, but Jesus actually has version 3.0.
Right.
His earthly body was resurrected and joined to his spiritual body, and we get the same. So all things are going to be made new again. Isaiah talks about how the lamb and the lion will lie down together, how the little child will play with the cobra, how there's harmony in all of God's creation. So yes, they're going to be animals. I mean, read Revelation. They're birds, they're horses, why wouldn't there be? And if God allowed us and taught us, many of us as kids, to love through our pets, right? To care for our pets and love. Why would he rip that away from us?
Right.
He is the author of relationship. He is the author of love.
So good. Man, our time is just about up. But one of the thoughts that came to me as you were speaking, the Bible often talks about one of the last enemies to be defeated is death. But I think all of us have lost people that we love.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's a great grandpa, there's someone that, and we begin to lose more as we get older and older, friendships and things. And we need to really hang on to this fact that you're more alive than ever. That when someone dies that you love, they are so alive. And I even encourage people as a pastor that, when you think about them, don't think about them dead, because they are so alive. They are laughing, and they're the youngest they've ever looked. Good looking. There's no wrinkles and gray hair.
Well,
and
people
arthritic.
talk about the prime. You're in your prime.
You're in your prime. Exactly.
Leon, it's fascinating the way God works, because this book began with my father's death. And I finished the manuscript this year as my mom was dying.
Oh.
And she went through 8 long years of Alzheimer's. So it's just a brutal disease. But in the hospital, my sister was kind of afraid to let her go and afraid of death. And I read the manuscript out loud to my mom and my sister those 12 days.
Beautiful.
And at the end of it, my sister looked at me and said, I want to go with her. And I said, no,
we need you.
That's one of the things that God tells everyone is, I still have a purpose for you here.
Yeah.
And you come back and your purpose, you have a purpose. And it begins with loving the people around you.
Yes.
It begins with using your gifts to serve the people around you in the name of Christ, to serve God, to love God and to love people. But it was such a beautiful thing. To be there, my sister and I hugging as my mom passed, and I knew she came more alive than she had ever been, and she heard us blessing her.
John, thank you.
And we will be together again.
You will.
It's the hope of heaven.
This has been a great, great, great time. I think that the early church didn't fear death. Notice that even in the other writings, when they hung them on crosses, when they fed them to lions, the inscriptions we read in the catacombs below, where, it's like they were not afraid of, they had to have
the hope of heaven.
The hope of heaven that was so real that death didn't bother them. And I think maybe that's something we need to consider again in our modern world.
Absolutely.
John, thank you for being with me.
Thanks, Leon.
If you've been watching, you need to get a hold of this book, Imagine Heaven. I think it'll start some great conversations, even with family and friends that don't know Christ, because everybody wonders what happens after death. We'll be right back.
Devoted, a daily devotional created with you in mind. Easy to read and simple to understand. These 2-minute faith boosters are available in 8 different languages. Watch it on YouTube or have the booklet sent directly to your home. You can also receive Devoted to your email inbox daily. Become inspired as Leon Fontaine shares practical biblical teaching. Devoted is literally at your fingertips. Transform your life with this Spirit Contemporary devotional. Sign up to receive Devoted today.
I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with John. This whole area of heaven and near-death experiences is fascinating. One of my favorite things about this talk show is that we get to hear such a variety of incredible stories from our guests. Sharing our experiences is so powerful. Part of Spirit Contemporary is sharing your story. You know, God has touched your life. He's done things for you. You don't need to be a preaching machine. You don't need to answer every question that they ask you. In fact, most of my responses to the questions people ask me is just what God has done in my life. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good." And that's one of the ways of being Spirit Contemporary, learning to communicate with people in a way that really connects, that really gets through. But you've got to be Spirit Contemporary. You can't just be contemporary. To be Spirit Contemporary means you've spent time with God. You know, when the disciples, whenever they opened their mouth and spoke, everybody would notice they'd spent time with Jesus because something had affected them where they spoke like Him with the confidence and the power that Jesus had. To be Spirit Contemporary is to spend time with God so that you're spiritually alive, filled with His presence. And contemporary means you know how to communicate and connect to the people that you're dealing with. This is crucial, especially with television, as we get out to all these different languages around the world and all these different kinds and groups of people. We need to be Spirit Contemporary. We'd love to have you join this cause. For $30 or more, that donation will go tremendously towards helping so many people. And I'd like to send you a gift, just saying thank you for becoming a part of this team. There will be people who make heaven because you help get the gospel of Jesus Christ around this planet in a Spirit Contemporary way.
We trust that you are being blessed, uplifted, and encouraged in your Christian walk through today's program. As a viewer, you should know that we care about you. We value you greatly and appreciate your prayers. Did you know that Miracle Channel is taking the good news of Jesus Christ around the world through award-winning programs like this? We are actively translating ministry programs into languages like Spanish, French, Italian, and even Russian. We even air on television stations in the Middle East. This means that millions upon millions of people are hearing about Jesus Christ in their language, and it's all thanks to people like you. Considerable expenses are involved, so we need your support because each person who gives their life to Jesus is absolutely worth the cost. Each is of infinite value to God. You are very important to us. We care greatly about your spiritual growth, which is why we would like to get today's resources into your hands. When you support this program by making a donation, you are not only enriching your walk with the Lord, you are sharing Jesus with someone on the other side of the globe. Your donation transforms lives by reaching literally millions of people with the gospel. Call now and change someone's life today.
Tomorrow, Dr. Wallach is back to share how nutrients affect your weight.
The guy stands up and throws his chest out and says, "I eat 25 eggs a day. Been doing it for 17 years. I'll do it for the next 100 years. He says, "Why on earth do you eat 25 eggs a day?" He says, "Because it made me more studly."